Shaquille O'Neal buys groceries for a mother who couldn't afford diapers. Her tears say it all. A four-chapter story of unexpected kindness in everyday America. Chapter 1. The Weight of Choices. The fluorescent lights of the Walmart supercenter hummed overhead as Maria Rodriguez pushed her squeaky shopping cart down aisle 12. The familiar weight of financial pressure sat heavy on her shoulders as she clutched a crumpled piece of paper. Her carefully calculated shopping list, where every item had been considered and reconsidered 3 times over. At 26, Maria had learned to navigate grocery stores like a chess master, calculating every move. Her 8-month-old daughter Isabella was perched in the cart's child seat, her tiny hands reaching for the colorful packages that lined the shelves. The baby's diaper bag hung loosely from Maria's shoulder, and she could feel it, nearly empty, with maybe 2 diapers left inside. "Okay, mija," Maria whispered to Isabella, her voice carrying the subtle accent of her Puerto Rican heritage. "We can do this. Just the essentials today." The November evening cast long shadows through the store's windows. Outside, the Atlanta suburb of Marietta was settling into its quiet rhythm. But inside the store, Maria's world felt anything but calm. She had exactly $47.83 in her checking account, money that needed to stretch until her next paycheck from the diner, where she worked double shifts on weekends. Maria stopped in front of the baby care section, her heart sinking as she looked at the prices. A pack of diapers cost $12.99. Formula was $18.50. She picked up the diaper package, feeling its weight in her hands, then glanced at her list. Milk, bread, eggs, rice. The basics that would feed them both for the next few days. $13, she murmured, doing the math in her head. "If I buy these, I can't get the eggs, and Isabella needs these more than I need." Her phone buzzed. A text from her babysitter. "Hey Maria, can you pay me tomorrow instead? I know you're tight this week." Maria's eyes welled up slightly. Even 17-year-old Jenny from next door knew her situation. The kindness of her neighbor only emphasized how visible her struggles had become. She quickly typed back a grateful response, then returned her attention to the impossible choice in front of her. The store was busy for a Tuesday evening. Families moved through the aisles with full carts. Teenagers grabbed snacks without checking prices, and elderly couples compared brands with the luxury of time. Maria envied their ease, their ability to shop without the constant mental calculator running in their heads. She placed the diapers back on the shelf and picked up the smaller, cheaper pack. 8 diapers instead of 24. It would last maybe 2 days, but it was what she could afford if she wanted to eat this week. Isabella began to fuss, her small voice echoing in the vast store. Maria reached into the diaper bag and pulled out a small toy, a worn stuffed elephant that had seen better days. It was Isabella's favorite, a gift from Maria's mother before she passed away 6 months ago. "Shh, baby girl," Maria cooed, gently bouncing the cart. "We're almost done." As she reached for the smaller pack of diapers, a massive shadow fell across the aisle. Maria looked up to see an incredibly tall man browsing the shelves near her. He was wearing a simple black hoodie and jeans, but his height was unmistakable, even without. Looking at his face, Maria recognized him immediately. Shaquille O'Neal was standing 3 feet away from her, examining baby formula with the concentration of any concerned parent. Maria's first instinct was to look away, to give the celebrity his privacy. She had grown up in Atlanta and had seen him around town before, always respectful of his space. But something in his posture, the way he was carefully reading the nutrition labels, made her realize he was probably shopping for his own family. Shaq picked up a container of formula, the same brand Maria had been eyeing but couldn't afford. He moved with surprising grace for someone his size, his presence both imposing and oddly comforting in the sterile environment of the store. Maria turned her attention back to her own shopping, but Isabella had other plans. The baby let out a delighted squeal and began reaching toward the tall stranger, her chubby arms stretching as far as they could go. "Isabella, no," Maria whispered, gently pulling her daughter's hands back. "Leave the nice man alone." But it was too late. Shaq had noticed Shaquille O'Neal turned at the sound of the baby's delighted gurgling, and his face immediately broke into the warm smile that had charmed audiences for decades. At 7 feet 1 inch, he had to look down considerably to see Isabella, but when he did, his expression softened completely. "Well, hello there, little princess," Shaq said, his deep voice gentle as he addressed the baby. Isabella responded with an even bigger smile and more enthusiastic arm-waving. Maria felt her cheeks flush. "I'm so sorry. She's usually not this social with strangers." "No need to apologize," Shaq chuckled, setting down the formula he'd been examining. "Kid's got good taste. Look at that smile." He made a silly face at Isabella, who burst into delighted laughter. For a moment, the grocery store seemed to fade away. Here was one of the most recognizable athletes in the world playing peekaboo with her daughter in aisle 12 of a suburban Walmart. Maria couldn't help but smile despite her stress. "She's beautiful," Shaq said, looking up at Maria. "How old?" "8 months," Maria replied, unconsciously adjusting Isabella's little pink jacket. "Her name's Isabella." "Isabella," Shaq repeated, testing the name. "That's a princess name if I ever heard one. Isn't that right, Princess Isabella?" The baby giggled again, completely enchanted by her new friend. While they talked, Shaq's observant eyes took in details that most people would miss. He noticed the careful way Maria held her shopping list, the way she'd hesitated over every item in her cart. He saw the worn edges of the diaper bag, the way she'd put back the larger pack of diapers in favor of the smaller one. Most telling of all, he noticed the look in her eyes. Not embarrassment, but the quiet determination of someone trying to make difficult choices with dignity. "Shopping for the week?" Shaq asked, casually gesturing toward her cart. Maria nodded. "Just picking up a few things." She didn't elaborate, but something in her voice caught Shaq's attention. In his years of fame, he'd developed an ear for the spaces between words, the things people didn't say. "I hear you," Shaq said. "I'm grabbing some stuff for my kids, too. They go through formula and diapers like it's going out of style." Maria laughed softly. "Tell me about it. Sometimes I think babies have a secret agreement to need everything at the most expensive times." Shaq chuckled, but he was watching Maria's face carefully. There was something about her, a strength that reminded him of his own mother, Lucille, during the years when she'd worked multiple jobs to keep their family afloat. He recognized the look of someone who was fighting hard but fighting quietly. "You know," Shaq said, as if struck by a sudden thought, "I was just about to grab some diapers for my little one. What brand do you recommend?" Maria glanced at the shelves, then at her small pack. "Well, these store-brand ones are actually pretty good quality. The name brands are nice, but honestly," she trailed off, realizing she was about to admit to a multimillionaire that she chose products based purely on price. "But honestly what?" Shaq prompted gently. "Honestly, they all do the same job," Maria finished with a small smile. "Babies don't care about brand names." Shaq nodded thoughtfully. "You're probably right. Mind if I ask you something, though?" Maria looked up at him, curious. "That pack you've got there, is that going to be enough for the week?" The question was asked so kindly, so without judgment, that Maria felt her guard drop slightly. She looked down at the small pack in her cart, then back up at Shaq's genuinely concerned face. "It'll have to be," she said simply. Those 4 words told Shaq everything he needed to know. He'd heard that tone before, in his mother's voice when she'd say they'd make do with what they had. It was the sound of someone who had learned not to ask for more than life was offering. Isabella chose that moment to reach out again, this time managing to grab onto Shaq's finger with her tiny hand. She held on tight, looking up at him with complete trust. "Look at that grip," Shaq said, gently wiggling his finger. "She's going to be strong." "She gets that from her mom," Maria said, then immediately looked surprised that she'd shared something so personal. Shaq studied Maria's face for a moment, seeing past the careful composure to the exhaustion underneath. He'd been in the public eye long enough to recognize when someone was struggling but too proud to show it. "You know what, Isabella?" Shaq said, addressing the baby but making sure Maria could hear every word. "I think your mom is already strong. Stronger than she probably knows." Maria felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. It had been months since anyone had acknowledged how hard she was working, how much effort it took to keep everything together. "Thank you," she whispered, not trusting her voice to say more. Shaq nodded, then seemed to come to a decision. "Hey, I've got an idea." "You know what?" Shaq said, his voice taking on the tone of someone who'd just solved a puzzle. "I'm terrible at shopping. Always end up forgetting half the stuff my kids need. Would you mind if I followed your lead here? You seem to know exactly what you're doing." Maria looked confused. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" "Well, you've got your list all figured out. You know the good brands from the expensive ones." Shaq gestured toward her carefully planned cart. "I always just grab whatever's at eye level and hope for the best. My kids deserve better than their dad's random shopping skills." Despite her confusion, Maria found herself smiling. "I don't know if I'm the best person to give shopping advice to. Well, to someone like you." "Someone like me?" Shaq raised an eyebrow playfully. "You mean someone who's 7 feet tall and can barely reach the stuff on the bottom shelves without looking ridiculous?" Maria laughed genuinely for the first time all day. "I was thinking more along the lines of someone who probably doesn't have to worry about budget considerations." Shaq's expression grew more serious but still warm. "You'd be surprised. Growing up, my mom had to worry about every penny. She taught me that being smart with money isn't about how much you have. It's about making sure what you spend goes to what matters most." Something in his tone told Maria that this wasn't just celebrity small talk. She studied his face and saw genuine understanding there. "What matters most?" Maria repeated softly, glancing down at Isabella, who was still contentedly holding on to Shaq's finger. "Exactly," Shaq said. "So here's what I'm thinking. How about we shop together? You show me how to pick the good stuff, and I'll—" He paused, as if considering his words carefully. "Well, let's just say I'll handle the bill. Think of it as payment for the shopping consultation." Maria's eyes widened. "Oh, no, no, I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" Shaq interrupted gently. "I'm serious about needing the help. And honestly, Isabella here already did me a favor by making me smile after a long day. This would just make us even." Maria shook her head, overwhelmed. "That's incredibly kind, but I can't accept—" "Let me ask you something," Shaq said, his voice taking on the wisdom of someone who'd learned hard lessons about pride and practicality. "If the situation were reversed, and you saw someone who needed help, maybe someone with kids, and you had the ability to make their day easier, wouldn't you want to do it?" Maria considered this. "Well, yes, but—" "No buts," Shaq said with a gentle smile. "Besides, you'd actually be doing me the favor. I hate shopping alone. It's boring, and Isabella here is way better company than my usual shopping buddy. Myself." Isabella chose that moment to babble happily, as if agreeing with Shaq's assessment. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Shaq said simply. "Say yes, and then show me how to shop smart. Deal?" Maria looked around the store, suddenly hyper-aware of the other shoppers who might be watching. But when she looked back at Shaq, she saw nothing but genuine kindness in his expression. No cameras, no publicity stunt, just one human being offering to help another. "Okay," she whispered, then cleared her throat and said it again, stronger. "Okay, but I want you to know, this means everything." "I know," Shaq said softly. "That's exactly why we're doing it." What happened next felt almost dreamlike to Maria. They moved through the store together, an unlikely trio. The 7-foot basketball legend, the young mother, and the baby who had somehow brought them together. Shaq insisted on hearing Maria's reasoning for every choice, genuinely interested in her strategies for finding quality at reasonable prices. "So you always check the unit price?" Shaq asked, studying the shelf tags with new interest. "Always," Maria confirmed, reaching for a larger pack of diapers, the size she'd originally wanted. "Sometimes the bigger size costs more up front, but it's actually cheaper per diaper." "That's brilliant," Shaq said, and he meant it. "I never even noticed those little numbers." They moved methodically through the store. Maria showed him how to compare protein content in different formulas, how to identify which store brands were made by name-brand companies, and how to spot the best deals in the produce section. "You're like a shopping detective," Shaq observed, as Maria explained how she planned meals around weekly sales. "When every dollar counts, you learn to make them work harder," Maria replied, then immediately worried she'd said too much. But Shaq just nodded, understanding. "My mom used to say something similar. She called it stretching dollars until—" They screamed. As they shopped, other customers began to notice them. A few people pulled out phones, but Shaq handled it with practiced ease, politely declining photos while keeping his attention focused on Maria and Isabella. "You don't have to do this," Maria said as their cart filled with groceries. Real groceries, including fresh fruits and vegetables she hadn't been able to afford in weeks. "I want to," Shaq replied. "Besides, look how happy Isabella is. She's the real winner here." Indeed, Isabella was having the time of her life, babbling and laughing as their unusual shopping trip continued. She'd appointed herself as the unofficial entertainment director, charming everyone they passed. When they reached the checkout line, Maria felt a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The cart was full of everything she needed for the next 2 weeks, plus some things she'd only dreamed of buying, like the organic baby food Isabella loved, but that cost twice as much as the regular kind. "Total comes to $247.83, the cashier said, trying to play it cool despite recognizing both the tall customer and the growing crowd of onlookers who'd gathered at a respectful distance. Shaq handed over his card without hesitation, but Maria saw something else in his gesture, a quiet satisfaction, as if he was the one receiving the gift. The parking lot of the Walmart was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic on I-75. The November evening had settled into that crisp coolness that made Georgia winters feel gentle compared to the harsh cold of northern states. Under the amber glow of the parking lot lights, Maria stood beside her beat-up Honda Civic, watching Shaquille O'Neal help load groceries into her trunk, with the same care he might have shown handling a newborn. "I still can't believe this is real," Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. Isabella was sleeping peacefully in her car seat, exhausted from all the excitement and new faces. Shaq placed the last bag in the trunk and turned to face Maria. "Believe it," he said simply, "and know that you're not alone out here." That's when the tears came. They started slowly, just a shine in Maria's eyes that caught the parking lot lights. But as the full weight of the evening settled over her, the tears began to flow freely. These weren't tears of embarrassment or pity. They were tears of relief so profound that Maria had to lean against her car for support. "Hey," Shaq said gently, his voice filled with concern. "You okay?" Maria nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. "I don't usually— I try to keep it together." "You don't need to apologize for feeling grateful," Shaq said. "And you sure don't need to apologize for being human." Maria looked up at him through her tears. "You don't understand. This morning I was sitting in my car before work, trying to figure out how I was going to make it through the next 2 weeks. I had $47 to my name, and I was calculating whether I could afford both diapers and food." She laughed through her tears, a sound that was half joy and half disbelief. "I actually sat there wondering if I could ask my manager for an advance on my paycheck, even though I knew he'd say no." Shaq listened without interrupting, understanding that she needed to say these words. "My mom used to tell me that angels come in all shapes and sizes," Maria continued, her voice growing stronger. "I never really understood what she meant until tonight. I thought I was just going to buy a few essentials and hope they lasted. Instead," she gestured toward the trunk full of groceries, "instead, I met you." "You didn't meet an angel," Shaq said with a gentle smile. "You met someone who remembers what it's like to count every penny. Someone whose mom worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Someone who learned that when you're blessed with the ability to help, you help." Maria nodded, understanding flooding her expression. "Your mom sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was," Shaq agreed. "And she would have loved Isabella. She always said babies were pure joy in human form." As if hearing her name, Isabella stirred in her car seat and made a soft cooing sound. Both adults turned to look at her, and despite everything, Maria found herself smiling. "She's going to have a good week," Maria said, looking at the groceries again. "Fresh vegetables, good formula, enough diapers that I won't have to ration them." She turned back to Shaq. "Do you know what that means to a mom? To not have to choose between your baby's needs and everything else?" Shaq nodded. "I'm starting to understand. This isn't just about the groceries," Maria said, her voice gaining conviction. "It's about dignity. It's about feeling like I can provide for my daughter properly. It's about—" she paused, searching for the right words. "It's about remembering that there's still kindness in the world." The parking lot around them continued its quiet evening rhythm. Cars came and went, other shoppers loaded their purchases, and drove home to their own lives and challenges. But in this small corner of suburban Atlanta, something significant had happened. "Can I tell you something?" Maria asked. "Of course. I was raised to be independent, to work hard and never ask for help. When Isabella's father left, I promised myself I'd prove I could do it alone." She looked down at her sleeping daughter. "But tonight taught me that accepting help isn't weakness. It's what people do for each other." Shaq was quiet for a moment, then spoke thoughtfully. "My mom used to say that pride and stubbornness look the same from the outside, but they feel different on the inside. Pride makes you want to stand tall. Stubbornness just makes you tired." "Wise woman," Maria said. "Very wise." She also taught me that the point of success isn't to build walls around yourself, it's to build bridges to other people. Maria wiped away the last of her tears and extended her hand to Shaq. "Thank you," she said. "For the groceries, yes, but more than that, thank you for seeing me, for treating me like a person, not a charity case, for playing with Isabella and making her laugh, for showing me that there are still good people in the world." Shaq shook her hand gently, his massive palm completely engulfing hers. "Thank you for letting me help, for showing me how to shop smart, for reminding me why this stuff matters." As Maria got into her car and buckled her seatbelt, Shaq leaned down to the window. "Hey, Maria?" "Yes?" "Your mom was right about angels coming in all shapes and sizes. But sometimes they come disguised as tired young mothers who refuse to give up on their kids. Isabella's lucky to have you." Maria felt fresh tears spring to her eyes, but these were different tears. Tears of recognition, of feeling truly seen. "Thank you," she whispered. As she drove away, Maria glanced in her rearview mirror to see Shaq still standing under the parking lot lights, watching to make sure she got safely to the road. In that moment, she understood something profound about kindness. It wasn't just about the giving or the receiving. It was about the connection, the moment when two human beings recognized each other's humanity and chose to act from love rather than indifference. The groceries in her trunk would feed her family for 2 weeks. But the memory of this evening, and the reminder that compassion still existed in unexpected places, would sustain her much longer than that. Isabella slept peacefully in her car seat as they drove home through the quiet streets of Marietta, completely unaware that she had just witnessed one of those rare moments when the world reveals its capacity for unexpected grace. But she would grow up hearing this story, learning from her mother's example that sometimes the most profound gifts come, not from what we receive, but from our willingness to remain open to the kindness of strangers. In a simple grocery store aisle, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, 3 lives had intersected in a way that would ripple forward for years to come. And sometimes, that's exactly how the world changes. One small act of kindness at a time.